used to be like that. I used to go to the gym at whatever time, whether it was evening, early evening, whenever, and have so many scoops of pre-workout and just be absolutely sweet and just sleep through. But maybe I'm getting more sensitive in my older age. And I'll tell you what is getting sensitive. I'll tell you what is very sensitive. The reason why I actually had to prolong this call a little bit and have a sleep is to temporarily recover, because my body right now is just
I know how you're feeling.
No. You don't know how I'm feeling. Let me just put that out there first, because you don't even know where I'm going with this. That's why
right.
you don't
Okay,
know
you're
how
going
I'm
somewhere else
feeling.
with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You think you know how I'm feeling, and maybe you do on the surface. So obviously we could dive into the jiu-jitsu session in a second, but what came from my first jiu-jitsu session was third-degree burns across my body, my knees,
Did
my
you get mat burn?
elbows.
Oh my god, that's the fucking worst. I got that all the time at the start. I'm gonna ask
The
you. Wait, were you
worst.
doing wrestler's walk by any chance as a warm up?
No, not even.
That's a burn speed run when you don't know how to do it. I can't lie. I burned the shit out of my knees doing that.
No, we didn't do the wrestler's walk. We did, to warm up, we did some shrimping. But bearing in mind, this was my first ever session.
Yeah, mate, you're gonna move like a little slug, 100%. Yeah.
So they just said go, and I was looking around thinking, I know this sounds stupid. I don't really know how to shrimp, so I just started doing it how I thought. And a fella sort of behind me sort of tapped, was like, it's a bit like this. I was like, cheers, mate. You can tell it's my
Moving about literally centimetre per minute. I know it. Did you do forward shrimp as well? That one's even more degrading.
We just went back a couple. I would have felt like literally a fish out of water.
You do feel like a dickhead when you do it too.
So I've got third-degree burns on my feet. Then I have third-degree burns on my back and shoulders, because when I walked to the gym, it was a 20-minute walk along the beach, and just stupidly, I walked unprotected in the midday sun and got burnt to a crisp. And I don't really often get burnt, nor have I been burnt to this level. And to just top it off, I wore a vest today, like a basketball jersey. But I thought I was out of the sun pretty much all day. I've come back inside. I've got the worst tan lines you have ever seen in your life. And they are so intense. I remember once I played golf, on a bit of a side tangent. Once I played golf a few years ago, and it just so happened to be a really hot day in England, and I got a really bad t-shirt tan, and I had those tan lines for about 3 years. So I'm pretty worried about these ones. I don't feel like they're going to go.
3 years?
They look terrible. Yeah, 3 years. That's
I've never tanned in my life, so I think just be blessed that you can actually tan. I've never tanned ever. I just burn and then get freckles, mate. That's my cycle.
I'll take the good parts from that. But the third and final burn of today was, I went on a excursion today on a fishing trip, and again, I'm sure we can get into this, my sort of first fishing trip, if you like. And we've gone for a snorkel at one of the spots around what's called Rock Island. So as you can imagine, it's just a rock, and you just sort of snorkel around it and whatnot. Bit of coral reef, some really cool fish and whatnot. I've come back to the surface and my face is just burning. And I've done snorkeling many, many times. So if it was anything sort of standard or a reaction to the sea, I would have felt that. And the friend that I was with said, it's probably the mask. And I was just sitting there thinking to myself,
I
was sitting there thinking, that ain't the flipping mask, mate. I've used a few snorkels in my time, and that is no snorkel. And it just kept getting worse. It was a really tingling, burning sensation all across my right cheek. And I kept asking him, I was saying, is it red? Is it red? It feels pretty flipping red. And he was like, no. So I got into the boat anyway, and I'm sitting there. And I said to my mate, I've just got stung by a jellyfish. I'm almost convinced. And he was like, I don't think you did. You would have seen it. I was like, I didn't see it, but I know that this feeling is not a typical one, and it is flipping hurting. And he said, no, I don't think so. 5-10 minutes later, he gets back in the boat, and he got stung at the back of his leg. And whilst this has happened, about 10 minutes has passed. So now I have a red laceration mark all up the right side of my cheek, like the Joker. And I turned to the captain and said, "Oh, jellyfish sting." And he said, "Oh, was it big one or small one?" He said, "Big one, fine, no problem. Little one, bad, very bad." And I said, "It was a little one." And he said, "Oh, 30 minutes, 30 minutes." I was like, is it 30 minutes until I'm dead or 30 minutes till I'm better? What 30 minutes is it? I was starting to panic a little bit. But apparently it would be okay. But the craziest thing is, it hasn't fully subsided. It's still
feeling it.
Yeah, it's still tingling quite intensely, to be perfectly honest. And I've had a 2-hour nap. So that's a recap on the burns anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry,
how did the actual session go in itself? I know I spoke to you briefly about it, but we wanted to save the conversation for the podcast for your very first proper, I say quote unquote proper jiu-jitsu session ever, which, obviously I'm taking great interest in. So fill me in. How did that go?
I thought you meant the fishing. I actually thought you meant the fishing.
Well, fishing as well. I mean, I've done fishing a couple of times, but I wonder about the jiu-jitsu first.
Yeah, I've never done it. Yeah, so first jiu-jitsu session, not clambering to go back, put it that way. My whole body's in pain, just from the burns, really. The rest of it, I was absolutely...
Oh, right, so not aching.
I've had the neck before, so I've had that issue before, and it wasn't too crazy, and didn't get to my back, so didn't have to fend off any rear naked chokes.
Oh, God.
And that's usually where they come, right? Especially when you're trying to fight for those. So I'll give you a comprehensive summary of what it looked like. So we started off with a light warm up, and then we did a technical breakdown of a submission, which was an interesting one actually. It was an interesting one because I'd never seen it before, and not just because I'm very new to the sport, just because it's not a very typical submission. It was like a Kimura adjustment, but the submission was with the forearm, like with the bone in the forearm. It was like the hard bit of the bone in the forearm goes against the soft bit in the bone on your opponent's arm. It was a very strange submission.
I feel like I've seen that. I'm roughly kind of trying to picture it. I feel like I know what you're talking about. If I saw it, I'd probably recognize it. I wouldn't know the name, though.
I'll describe it. It goes from like a Kimura, right? And then you punch through your right arm, permitting that you're doing it on the left side, and then you almost sort of like lock it up like a rear naked choke, and then you rotate as if it's like an Americana. So it's like a few things in one. I'm not probably explaining it very well. So that was one of them. And then the other submission that we went through was, what was it? We went from side control, and then it was, you know what it was very similar to? It was similar to the straight arm lock that Tom Aspinall got against Volkov.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was from side control, and it was off of like a crucifix, if that makes sense.
So you trap the opposite arm, and then
so you're in side control.
The opposite side.
You trap the far side. So you're in. Say you got like a crossface, then you reach over with the left arm, control that arm, and then basically you sort of go, missing a couple of steps, but essentially you go knee on belly, and then you go you post with your head and go straight arm lock, make a bit of space in the stomach, and then you sort of using the hands, the mechanics are on the elbow, so you sort of post on your head, mechanics sort of on the elbow.
I don't know that.
Then, yeah, it was quite cool.
Nice.
I've actually got the footage of the submission breakdown, so because I filmed everything.
Shit,
so
yeah, I'm gonna see that.
Yeah, I can definitely
any
send
chokes
it to
or
you.
both? Just
that was it. Yeah. That was it. To be honest, I didn't really care what... It wasn't I didn't care, but I wasn't too fussed what they were, because I was thinking...
It's first session. Yeah. That's hard for your first session.
Yeah.
Like, that is. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you got to expect what you got to expect. Like, when I did a taster session in September, trying to get back into it, they were doing, like reverse De La Hiva and shit, like a guard, and rolling to heel hooks. And, mate, my leg lock game is, like, straight ankle lock. That's about the limits of my leg lock game. Like, so I was so out of my depth. And knee bars as well. And they were learning knee bars. I was like, Jesus Christ. I was trying to keep up with all of that. So I understand what it's like. But how did the sparring go?
Yeah, so we did a couple of rounds of that, just some positional things, and to be honest, in my head I was thinking I'm not going to hit this in live sparring, but when it's broken down like that, I can more than easily just adapt to my body and know the mechanics enough to just drill it. And my partner was quite surprised how quick I picked that up. I didn't think it was that crazy, to be perfectly honest. I thought it was just sort of quite standard. Um, but yeah, I've done okay in that, just drilling it. I wasn't sort of, when you get newbies and they're like, what hand goes here? What, those ones. I wasn't
No,
that.
usually,
So
usually it's whenever someone comes in, it's just an absolute thrash, they're just going 300%
yeah,
in rolling, going crazy. That's what it's a lot less calm, a lot more, yeah, a lot less calm than the way you're
that
describing
was
it. But
just
I
the
get what you're
drilling.
saying.
That was just the
Oh, for the
drilling. To
drills,
be
yeah,
fair,
no.
yeah, that was just the drilling, not the actual sparring. But yeah, so we get into the sparring, and I've rolled maybe, if we're talking rounds, I've maybe rolled 3 rounds in my life of a couple of minutes a time with one of my friends who's a blue belt, but is obviously a lot better than me, but has taught me any submission that I'd learned. So effectively could render me useless. So I've done literally a couple of rounds there with him. And I made the basic mistakes the first couple of times when I'd done those rounds. Very, very white belt mistakes, similar things to holding on guillotines, uh, isometrically holding too hard and gassing out my
What do you mean by that?
muscles.
Isometric hold. What is that? What do you
So
mean by that?
an isometric hold is if you
Yeah, I'm getting
if you have an
educated.
isometric. Sorry, I should have said that. I should have been more clear. So in
Nice, all good.
the gym world, if you do an isometric hold, it basically means a typical lift would be a sort of contraction, right? So let's say you're doing a bicep curl, you'd contract the muscle like this. So you'd have an eccentric phase, which is it moving
Mm.
down, and you'd have a concentric phase, which is contracting. An isometric hold is basically when you just hold something in a position. So if you were doing a dumbbell curl, you just hold it in that fully contracted position. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you're
So,
just
for
not no
example, to
movement.
translate that over to jiu-jitsu terms, what that would look like is having a body lock on someone and just squeezing as flipping hard as you possibly could
Yeah.
with no movement and just rigorous force because your muscles are isometrically contracting. There's no movement in
Okay.
them. You're
Oh,
just
right.
squeezing them in a still
Got you.
position. So that's usually what a lot of white belts do, right? Because they're just trying to understand what's happening. They're trying to exert force and trying to keep some control with little technique. So that's often what happens. And then that's why usually when you wake up the next day after your first couple of jiu-jitsu sessions, you're in the most pain ever in random muscles because you've just been squeezing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I did that, to be honest. I
Good.
don't think I did that. I didn't do that because my partner that I was with was telling me that, so I was bigger than him, and he was telling me that I was exploding out of quite a lot of positions. I didn't agree with him, to be honest. There were a couple where, don't get me wrong, it was it was a little bit more strength than technique. But I really don't think that I was exploding or using any strength. And I know that to be true because I've done it a couple of times before. I've seen what that looks like when I've done that and what it feels like even. And also, I was not getting gassed. I was in good shape. I felt good, to be honest. We wasn't going super hard, obviously, but we done a good few rounds in very, very hot heat. And I was nasal breathing in between rounds. I was ready to do a few more, to be perfectly honest, if it wasn't for my feet being so chewed up. But the actual session itself, I thought I'd done pretty well, to
That's
be
good.
honest. I
But that's
actually
good.
did, yeah.
Did you film it
Yeah.
at all? I asked you this. Were you
Yeah,
going
I
to film it?
filmed
But I missed.
everything.
Oh,
Yeah, I
mate,
filmed
show me
everything.
the rolls. 100%. I really.
Yeah, for
Yeah. I
sure.
can't believe you didn't say that. So you
Sorry.
got to show me this right after.
Sorry. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna clarify what I mean by done well, so you don't get your hopes up too
No,
much.
I know what you're saying.
What I mean by I think I done well is I'll tell you actually. I'll break that down for you. Is managed to pass guard, managed to get into full mount. And as soon as I just slammed that knee in full mount, I was like, such a nice feeling,
It's
even
like,
though it wasn't a
it's the windscreen
submission.
wipe over, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
mate, it's so nice, isn't it?
It was such a nice feeling. Yes, I filmed all around, so obviously you'll see them. Don't get me wrong, I watched it back and thought, oh god, this.
I've never filmed
not.
myself, so I'm curious to see
Oh
what that
really?
looks, how that feels like for you. Yeah, I've never done it. I should have done that. Kind of regret
Yeah,
it, but
I didn't look sharp at all. But what I would say, the things that I'd done well is my guard retention was really good. I
that's
think.
good.
Yeah, for a white belt, I think my guard retention was pretty good. I was just using very
Especially for
basic
someone, because
defense.
you're quite a bigger guy. It's quite. I feel like you obviously because you're in shape, you're probably quite speedy. You're going to be quite speedy as well. But that helps so much for me, even when I'm rolling with the heavier
For
guys.
sure.
Having speed allows my guard retention is pretty good because of that. So it's a good thing that
Yeah,
you've got that down, at least in some capacity.
yeah, just on the very basics. I said to I think we finished the first round. The first thing he said to me is, "There's no way that this is your first session." I was like, "No, it genuinely is." But what I said to him is, it wasn't like I was some phenom. But if you take a day one white belt that's never done jiu-jitsu and you take me, I just have an infinite
Yeah, you do. You're in
advantage of
shape
knowledge,
and you
right?
watch pros roll.
This
There
is
you
the
go.
thing. It's like you have to. I said to him, I was like, you have to remember. Not only do I watch a lot of these sessions close up, I know a lot of people in the industry. I always ask coaches questions, even when I'm behind the camera. I watch jiu-jitsu stuff anyway, like B Team, just sort of passively. I listen to interviews, even stupid things like listening to a John Danaher podcast and him explaining jiu-jitsu. It helps. It really does help. And then the biggest thing for me, I think, is obviously doing all these things is not going to give you a certain layer of skill, right? But it's going to teach you some fundamental things not to make stupid mistakes. And the biggest thing for me was listening to commentary. I listened to commentary zoned in for 7 hours every single Saturday in the UFC. So I pick up so much information. Again, just basic. So things like defensively building frames, and I was making sure that I had a good knee shield. I was making sure that defensively, if I was in their guard, I was following the hips to not allow them to sort of set up submissions, just keeping my arms kind of quite tucked in and not
Keep them
flailing
in.
them
Yeah.
around and
I said that
things like
last week.
that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you did. And
Yeah.
these are all like super basic things that I know, but again, it's going to have an advantage over someone that's never done anything before. So yeah, I think I'd done pretty well to retain my guard. I built pretty decent frames. I think I'd done okay, to be honest. And then the thing that I could definitely feel is the difference is if I'd done it a couple of years ago when I knew nothing, is my ability to pick up on submissions, right? So I could identify them early, whether it was the armbar, whether it was the triangle, whether it was a leg entanglement. Yeah, defensively, I could pick up on those things. Now, there wasn't necessarily 10 layers of setup that I was sort of thought through and then went through it, but I could identify on a basic level what submissions they were going for, whether it be a Kimura, whether it be an armbar, triangle, different things like that. So that also benefited me. Then at the end, he kept saying like I was going quite hard. You can tell me. You can watch the footage.
Yeah,
honestly,
I'm glad you
I
recorded
don't
it.
think I was. I really don't think I was, because I would have woke up. I would have been tired after the rounds, and I would have been sore the next day. And I wasn't neither, to be honest. I wasn't exerting much energy at all. To be fair, I did sort of stiff arm a couple of times. I think that's what he mentioned. I sometimes when I built my frames, I just used quite a stiff arm, so it's like may have felt a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, to be fair, I get that. Yeah.
You know, the only time I genuinely just horse-powered my way out of it is I said, okay, cool, like let me try and flow a little bit more. And he got into mount and just sort of smothered me. And it was crushing my nose, like actually just
no
crushing
way! He was
my
mother's
nose.
milking you.
No,
What a dickhead!
I know what that. No, it wasn't that deep. I know what that submission is, to be honest. I've seen Brad hit that in the gym. It actually
It's such a bitch
wasn't
move. I've done it before once and I felt so bad and I never did it again. Literally, And it's if he did that on you and just your first session, that is, I'm not. That's me, man.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was foul play, to be honest. Maybe he was a bit annoyed at it. I don't know. He's my friend, so I don't. I don't know. I don't think there was foul play. He said that he was just trying to establish position because he was quite a high mount, so I couldn't buck off,
Okay.
right? So it was quite a high
Yeah,
mount.
that's what you
So
want.
he said that he was just sort of trying to establish position, but it was crushing my nose. So he had quite a high mount, and I had no room to breathe whatsoever. But the first time I ever did a roll, that happened, and I tapped because honestly, I didn't know if I was uncomfortable. No, it wasn't panic. I just thought it was a submission. I thought I'm gonna pass out. I can't breathe. I thought it was quite logical, to be honest. And that's the thing that I said to him the other day, to one of my friends. I actually said, the thing when you're a beginner is, because you don't always know the submissions and you don't always know the mechanics, you don't actually know what's a breaking mechanic and what's discomfort and what's like a choke submission and what's discomfort. But because now I know that smothering is more discomfort, in my head, I was just stay relaxed.
Firm it.
I just said to myself, I am not tapping today through a smother choke. I will tap to a submission that is in. I have no pride or ego in this game, but I am not tapping to being smothered. It is not happening. I just said to myself, I had a word with myself. I said, not today. Not today.
It's so uncomfortable, but you can't actually, it won't, and it can be kind of painful as well. If you're crushing right in your nose, it can hurt. But,
mate,
you know,
it was on the bridge of my nose, just literally flattening it out. And it was absolutely horrible. But yeah, that was very uncomfortable. But I will say as well, just because I mentioned he had a high mount, the one thing that he even picked up on, and I thought I'd done quite a good job on, was the timing of like bucking and trying to get to hips and sort of like scrambling out of positions. I think my timing was quite good because I was just picking the right moments, just when the weight distribution was just off or the transitions were just happening. Okay. Yeah, that's what I sort of picked up on. Because I knew as well, I was like, in MMA terms, when you're in a bad position, there should be constant movement. You should never settle in MMA, right? Because obviously the consequences are so dire. In Jiu-Jitsu, it's a little bit different. You can settle a little bit longer, and you can actually settle in not great positions and then start building out of it. But obviously I knew as well that I didn't have the energy to just like bark and shrimp and get to a hip, get to an elbow like consistently. So I had to sort of just buy my opportunities, and I think I've done a pretty good job of sort of timing them. So yeah, I've got all the footage because I asked the coaches. I sort of know the coaches fairly well there now, and I sort of said to them, "Can I go in the corner and just film it?" And they said, "Yeah, fine." So I've got all of the rounds recorded.
I'm excited.
So I'm excited. I wouldn't be. It's not that exciting of a watch.
No, I'm interested. This has been a long time coming.
But yeah, of course you can. Of course you can watch them.
Just before we round off into some UFC 300 chat, I'll ask you one question. Would you do it again?
You want my honest assessment?
Please.
I enjoyed it. Right.
Here comes the butt. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a butt.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Listen, don't get me wrong. I would enjoy some softer mats, and that was a big drawback. Didn't enjoy that whatsoever. As I look at my toes, and I won't put them on camera. But
actually, yeah, that's something I was going to ask you. Do you have a mark just below your big toe on either of your feet, like a red sort of mark? Yeah. It's always there, right at the bottom of the base, sort of in between. Yeah. It's everybody gets that one. That little one just below, right in between your index toe, is that a thing? And your big toe. Yep, there you go. Yours is quite bad, to be fair.
You can't see the full angle. I'm actually going to give you the full angle.
No, I saw it. Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, yours are rough. Yeah, I feel like that's a rite of passage. Everybody gets those.
What's worse is obviously the terrain that I'm in. I'm in a tropical country. So
another one.
series of infection is just rife. So I've had to go and spend an absolute foot. But I've got them all over my hands. I've got them all over. It's everywhere.
Yeah,
On my
pretty rough to
face,
be
even, I
fair.
think. Yeah, it was super sharp. So yeah, aside from that, you know what the thing is? I was thinking about this yesterday. You know, everyone, and you've mentioned it before, and everyone mentions it. It's true, I guess. Well, not I guess, it is true. But you know, everyone talks about, oh, jiu-jitsu so humbling, and you go there and you feel humbled, and you feel so powerless, and it's crazy how powerless you feel. You know that sort of,
Yeah.
like, I don't get that. I don't,
I said that, to be fair. I did say that. Did you roll with a black belt?
no. No, let me make sure I'm clear with what I mean by that. It wasn't I didn't feel that. I didn't know what that felt like. It was just a case of I always knew that would be the case. Like it that isn't a
No,
surprise
that
to
is
me.
true.
Like,
I went in with the same expectations as well, and I get what you're saying. But the difference is, as I said, when you roll with someone who's at that top level, it's completely different. It's beyond anything you'd think. Like
but
that
I've
is
rolled.
crazy.
The thing is I've even when I did my first session, I even rolled with someone that's been doing it a couple of years, and they could do anything they wanted, right? So I'm not saying they are equal too, but my point is I never had. I think a lot of people look at jiu-jitsu and they think, oh, he's just grabbing onto him or he's just rolling. Like, I have years of detailed, nuanced knowledge of how intricate this sport is. So I have every belief that I'm powerless. I don't need to go into the session to have the humility. Like, I knew
To be
that
fair, I
way
think it's
before.
something. I think it's something that comes when you've actually already got the experience. Almost like for me,
Do you
like when I
think?
rolled with that guy. Yeah, 100%. I felt it the most when I'd already had a good year and a half experience, and I rolled with someone who was so that good that it completely. I felt like it was my first day on the mat. Like that's how
Mm.
badly I got dealt with because I just could do nothing, and I've been training for a good amount of time. You know,
I feel
so
like
that's
to have
that's the
that
difference maker.
reaction, I feel like to have that reaction, you'd almost have to have an expectation that that wouldn't happen.
I suppose so, and I didn't think like that, but I never thought I'd beat him at all. But at the same time, you still get it
Not as
anyway. I don't
bad.
know.
But
No,
that's
yeah,
one thing that I wanted to say. It wasn't like, oh, I'm invincible to jiu-jitsu.
yeah.
It was
You
more
expect to
case
do badly.
I
Yeah,
expect to be terrible. I expect someone to be able to twist me up like a pretzel. I expect these people to be far superior to me. So I did, it wasn't like I needed that session to have that humility, if that made sense. I wasn't
yeah,
one of those people before that was like, I'm a jiu-jitsu skeptic, and then I needed
yeah.
that to be. It wasn't like that at
Bradley
all.
Martin,
Yeah,
260, gym
yeah.
rat.
Yeah,
They're
I
just
was
too
never
red.
under
Yeah,
any illusion that as an untrained person, I was going to have any upper hand on anyone that had done a fraction of training. Um, so that is one thing I will say to that. I'll round off with my fishing today, and then we'll get into the UFC 300 stuff. Because it was the first time that I've ever fished properly, I guess. And the first time I ever caught fish either. We caught about 15 fish between us. So we caught quite a lot. And we caught some
nice.
big daddy ones. Yeah, some really they're probably about 4 foot long, like they're kind of crazy size.
Yes.
And we went there, we caught some fish and then went back on the boat and they just sort of handed them over to us. I was like, I don't know what to do with these really. So we just walked up to a restaurant and asked them if they could cook them for us, and I was like, "Yeah, sweet." So I went
Nice.
behind the scenes with them and filmed them whilst they prepared it all, scaled it, gutted it, chopped it up, and then filmed them chuck it on the barbecue, and then we just sat down on the beach and ate about
Beautiful.
5 kilos of fish, I think it was. So yeah, it was a pretty cool experience. To be fair, that was always sort of a bucket list thing for me to be able to go and
Awesome.
catch a fish and grill it and eat it on the beach. So I ticked that off today. So that's pretty
I
cool.
have done the first part of that a few times, but definitely not cooking it
Nice.
as well afterwards. Yeah, it's a fun
What
time
ones
if
did you
there's actually
catch?
fish to catch. Oh mate, it was
Oh,
a
there's
while ago. It
loads.
was when I was in America, in Florida or something like that. Yeah, no, it was a good time. I was younger though, you don't appreciate it as much. I was thinking, I wish I did a lot of things I've done now as
Mm.
a 22-year-old. I probably appreciate it a hell of a lot
I've
more.
found that I do all the same stuff over again. All the stuff that I did when I
Yeah,
was a
same.
kid that I maybe moaned about or didn't take any interest in, I do now as an adult and have a thoroughly enjoyable time. To be
Yeah,
fair, which is always funny.
yeah. Right, so let's get into some UFC 300 chat. We were suggesting the idea before we punched record of doing. We'll go over the card itself, but we'll have 3 fantasy matchups each for a hypothetical UFC 300, which we would love to see. And I think we should go through those first, really. I have mine written down. I
Agreed.
actually had 4, but I couldn't decide between the last one. And we'll go one at a time. I'm just going to chuck one straight in. We'll go from reverse order. So, third to the main event, if we want to go that way. I'll throw you a good one. I feel like you'll like this one. Nunes versus Shevchenko 3 for all the marbles.
Jesus Christ, I just don't care.
You don't care about that. I
Not
care about
really.
that matchup. I've wanted that matchup for a
I
long
kn-
time. I'll probably get a lot of
you
flack for
really,
that. I don't care.
you really have. You've been petitioning
I've
that
said
for a
it.
very
I've said
long
it
time.
before.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's good.
Couldn't excite me much less.
Let's say with the hypothetically with the bantamweight title on the line as well.
Honestly, it couldn't entice me much less, and especially now that we've seen Valentina lose. So that I know she
Yeah.
lost obviously to Nunes, but I mean more recently to other foe. So it's like it humanizes her even more. So there is even less desire for me for that fight, and the fact that
I'll
Amanda
chuck the
Nunes
other
is
one then, just
retired.
because I had an extra. Because I was torn
I
between
think
that
that's
one.
terrible. I'm gonna put that out
Right, Makhachev versus Edwards.
there.
We'll go with that. Makhachev versus
Fun.
Edwards. Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like that's probably the high right now. That is the highest level matchup you can make in MMA right now, personally. And I think that would answer a lot of questions. One of is Leon's wrestling capable against the guy, sort of that Dagestani style. So I stumbled over my words there. And also, can Islam rise to the occasion at a higher weight class, which is obviously a question on everyone's minds for a long time. I think it's a great matchup. I think striking wise, I think it's actually really interesting as well
Mm.
because Makhachev, in my opinion, probably has the most underrated striking in the lightweight division for sure. Perhaps even the whole roster, maybe a bit hyperbolic, but I wouldn't think it's far fetched to say.
I like that.
That's better. You prefer it?
Well, that was meant to be the headliner, right?
Yeah. I mean, what's your third pick going upwards?
Okay, so you've said 2. You want me to come back with 1?
Yeah, no, that was meant to be 1. I just put 2 and 1 because I was stormed between 3. What's your
Okay,
third
okay.
third
So
option?
we're gonna go back and forth. Okay, the dream matchup. One of the dream matchups I would have liked to have seen at UFC 300 is going to come as no surprise. John Bones Jones versus Tom Aspinall.
That's my number
That
1.
was the fight. That was the fight, and I knew you was going to include that. That's why I said it
Yeah.
first. That was the fight that I wanted to see, and that is the fight that I do want to see because Tom Aspinall, as we've spoke about many times before, has all the skills, all the attributes, all the tools under the sun. The only thing that he doesn't have yet is those legendary names on his resume. And there's only one way we find out how he matches up against those people is to see them face off. And there's no one better than arguably the best fighter of all time that happens to be in his weight class, that happens to be coming off a win, and that happens to be holding the championship belt. That fight, I believe, the UFC look at that as if they're going to drop the ball if they don't make Stipe John Jones. I don't think that's true. I think the real ball is going to be dropped. We're going to see down
I
the
think
line in a
everybody
couple
thinks
of
that.
years if they don't make John Jones Tom Aspinall. And we're never going to see that fight.
I think they know that. I think they do. Sorry, just to cut in. I think they
Agreed.
know that. I think they just want Jones to retire undefeated. That's the reality of it.
Agreed.
I think they want him to sail off into the sunset. They know full well that Tom Aspinall, John Jones is a legacy-defining matchup in the long run. That's, I guess you think short term, Miocic obviously has the name value more so
No, he
than
doesn't.
Tom.
He doesn't.
No, because for the casuals, and that's not saying much because I don't think he has very much anyway. But I think that
I
fights
don't
more,
think he does,
sells
though.
more. I don't even know. It's easy to say
I
that from
don't
us
think.
because most guys don't know who Tom Aspinall is. We're obviously like huge fans,
I
and we watch the
disagree.
sport every week.
I disagree because I'll tell you why I disagree. When was the last time Stipe Miocic fought? And by the way, legendary career, one of the best
Of
heavyweights ever.
course,
Let me just preface that. But he fought when?
4 years ago.
2020?
Yeah, 2020.
Right, 2020. Okay. So if we look at it like this, you say, okay, as a casual viewer. So if you're a casual, there is a higher chance that you've got into the sport more recently, sort of lockdown, post-lockdown, right? So who is going to have more relevancy in the scene? Stipe Miocic, who hasn't fought for 4 years, or Tom Aspinall, who's fought probably 7, 8 times, gone to MSG on short notice, knocked out Sergey Pavlovich, has been in the media wanting John Jones, has a YouTube channel, has Instagram content constantly, has TikTok content constantly. It's just a whole different ball game. And on the flip side, we have Stipe Miocic, who puts up a weightlifting video every other month. I'm not hating on him. I'm just painting a picture of social relevancy right now. That's the only thing that I'm trying to show, is because if you're not relevant on social media and you're not active, then you die off into the background very, very fast. It doesn't even matter who you are and what you've done. We can say most title defenses are heavyweight, one of the best, 100% true. But if you don't fight regularly and you don't create content, how do people remember you? And how do people know about you if they're new to the
And
sport?
he's not even the most marketable either. I don't think that's any sort of secret.
No,
So
and
on
he
top
doesn't
of that,
want to
yeah.
be. That's just not his style, right? And he doesn't sort of want to play that game, which is all fair enough. But if you zoom out and look at it objectively, I would 100% believe. And also, let's look at it like this. We know for a fact that if you're a US champion, you get little to no sort of unity backing, if you like, right? If you're a single country champion, you have a whole country behind you. So the UK is a perfect example. Not only do they have an entire place behind them, I'm not saying Stipe Miocic doesn't, but Manchester, the entirety of Manchester behind them, a very notorious fighting region with the likes of Tyson Fury down the road. You then have a whole country behind him. What has Tom Aspinall done since post-lockdown? Well, he's come back to the O2, headlined it multiple times on some of the biggest
3
cards
times.
in the UFC. Yeah, some of the biggest cards in UFC's recent history. If you look at that UFC London card, that was enormous for the UFC. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm being biased. No, I'm just being objectively true.
Yeah,
So,
you're probably right.
yeah.
I'll take that back. You successfully convinced me there. I mean, we both want the same thing at the end of the day. We want that matchup. And
For sure.
I'll chuck you my other pick. And I feel like this one, you know, when you think UFC 300, I said this to you every time we've really talked about 300, there's always got to be that bit of noveltiness. That's not even a word, just
Mm.
novelty to a fight card in some capacity. And for me, that combines, this fight combines both legacy and novelty. I feel like it has one of those fights that just never got made that we always wish did. George St. Pierre versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, and that piqued my
Oh,
interest.
that was my
Yeah.
trump card.
Oh, was it?
That was
Yeah.
my,
See, look, we're on the same wavelength here. Because
that
and the
was my
reason I
trump
say that
card.
is because I was briefly listening to Kamaru Usman and
Podcast.
Henry
Yeah.
Cejudo's new podcast, Pound for Pound, and they had GSP on there, and there was a brief bit of chat. I'm sure you saw it as well about the potential of a Khabib fight, and that just stuck in my head. I was like, damn, we really never got it. And I probably wouldn't want it now. I just wish in an ideal world, obviously we're talking fantasy, so let's have them both at their primes. I think that's probably that's the biggest legacy defining matchup you could make, arguably. I really don't think there's one better than that.
Yeah, that's perfect, really. That's exactly what I was going to say. And I also watched that interview, so it was even more on the top of my tongue. However, I'll also just step in and say, okay, I say John Jones and Tom Aspinall. This is a little bit faded for me now, and recent events sort of fades it a little bit. But to include John Jones' name again, John Jones, Francis Ngannou. John Jones,
Oh,
Francis
really? I
Ngannou.
don't know about that. There's just
Imagine
I
that
mean,
sits
I'd
at the
definitely be
top of
excited
UFC
for it.
300.
Yeah,
Come
true.
on. Come on.
Yeah,
Like,
fair
I know
enough. Fair
on
enough.
surface it doesn't feel like a lot, and it's like, man,
But if
he's
I
not
saw it
even
on the
UFC.
poster, I'd be hyping up. I can't lie.
You're looking at the poster and
Yeah.
you see Francis and John Jones, and it's
I'm getting
building
excited
up to
now.
the event, and then they get to the co-main, and you know the person to walk out next is the scariest man to ever walk in the UFC and one of the most skilled. And they just are staring at each other across the octagon. And
Now I'm sad. that we're not getting it.
What?
I'm going through every emotion under the sun right now. I said, oh, I don't care. No, I do. Now I'm sad. You're right. You're right. Fair point.
I know I'm right. I know I'm right. Because there was so much mystique and intrigue around that fight that we've never seen John Jones lose. And the man that would be facing him is the man that could make anyone lose in a hair's breadth of a moment. And that is Francis Ngannou. And that's faded a little bit in the shadows of recent, but that still is up there. But my final one that I'll give to you, and then we can get into the card. And it's going to use Khabib's name again. And it's the most cliche one, but I mean it with my whole heart. Khabib versus Tony Ferguson.
No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
No way. What are you talking about? Prime for prime? I still wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
No. I get you. It's for the sentiment,
That's
and it's the
stupid.
fight that got away from us
It's
all,
not
and
sentiment.
I understand it.
It's not
really.
No.
No way. You've lost me there completely. Absolutely lost me.
Listen, let me just say.
Oh, I don't see it.
There's every chance that Khabib would have just went out and does what Khabib does Khabib things. But what? We have to sit here and pretend that a man on a 13 win streak that had the craziest. It's not that he's never been taken down, but his effectiveness off his back, his
I'm going to shut that
effectiveness
down
to
real
scramble.
quick. I was waiting for you to say that. He's had one submission off his back in his entire UFC career.
No. But you said submission. Who said I was just talking about submissions?
Yeah, fair point.
So this is my point, right? So it's not just it's not necessarily.
Yeah, but you
just
really think
submissions.
Khabib would even give him that luxury of being able to throw elbows off his back?
No, I don't think
he would.
so. I don't think so. But I think if there's anyone that's going to be able to create chaos, create scrambles, create opportunities, it's going to be Tony Ferguson. Now, for as good as Khabib is, and for as dominant as he is, we just remember him for this unrelenting pressure. He's stuck to everyone like glue. It's like, that's true. But if you go back and watch the fights, he isn't attached to these high-level guys for 25 minutes. Whether it's Justin Gaethje, even though he submitted him, whether it's Dustin Poirier, even though he submitted him. Like, my point is, it's like, yeah, I know he submitted him. Super impressive, not taking anything away. But it's not like there was no opportunities in any of those fights. It wasn't like Dustin Poirier didn't get him in a very deep guillotine. It wasn't like Conor didn't land shots on him. It's like, and the thing with Tony is, just like Khabib, incredibly awkward. And they're just... And if anyone was going to match the cardio of Khabib, it would be Tony Ferguson. There's no one that Khabib has ever fought that would have matched the cardio and the output like Tony Ferguson would have done. And there's no one that would have been able to take a beating and stay in a live fight for 25 minutes like Tony Ferguson. So do I believe that he was a nailed-on win? No. But do I believe that it was stylistically one of the most intriguing fights maybe of all time? 100%. Now, we've got recency bias that says 7 fights losing streak.
Yeah, it's hard to get past that, isn't it?
It's hard to get past that. It's hard to unravel everything you know and cast your mind back to when...
Yeah, exactly. And I would make that fight. I just think if I had 3 to pick, to decide everything, I definitely probably wouldn't pick Khabib Ferguson as one of those 3. I think there's more legacy-defining matchups to be made. As much as that fight is cursed and we all wish we saw it, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I want that matchup to happen. Well, I wanted, but yeah, there's other matchups. I'd put would I put McGregor Diaz 3 over that? I'm thinking. No, I don't know. Maybe not. But yeah, let's actually get onto the real UFC 300. We'll close that. We'll close it out with our few predictions for 300. I think we're on the same page for the main event: Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. And there's a lot of factors going into this one because obviously Jamal Hill isn't 100%. This fight wasn't in the plan. It wasn't part of the playbook, but he's taken it not necessarily on short notice, but with an injury in his, is it in his ankle? Or is
Achilles.
In his Achilles, which is obviously an area somewhere that Alex Pereira can exploit pretty easily with his calf kicks and just leg kicks in general. I don't know why I'm saying calf. And that is really the defining factor, in my opinion, is whether Alex Pereira can really get those leg kicks off and play his game. But I think fist for fist, Jamal Hill has the advantage. I think you'll That sounds a bit weird.
Terrible term.
Yeah, terrible term.
term.
In hand-to-hand combat, we'll go with that. I think Jamal Hill has the advantage there. Realistically, I think that straight 1-2 down the pipe, Israel Adesanya was landing that at will, really, against Pereira. And we saw Jamal getting coaching tips over FaceTime from Adesanya recently, which is no surprise, really. And if Jamal's able to, feel good in there and his injury doesn't really affect him, which is really what I'm expecting, I think he's going to get the TKO. I don't think that's even crazy to say. I think he'll finish him late. Maybe actually, no, early. I'll go an early finish with that 1-2 down the pipe and then ground strikes. I'm thinking round two. Round 2 TKO for Jamal Hill. I'll say it with chest.
I think the interesting thing about this matchup is the calf kicks of Alex Pereira are arguably his biggest weapon. Obviously, the left hook is the most devastating, and that's the thing that usually ends the fights. But usually the things that helps him get there are the calf kicks because they're so debilitating. Now, it is going to be an opposite stance match. Jamal Hill is a southpaw. So that isn't going to be quite as prevalent. Not saying that it's not going to be there, but it's not going to be as prevalent as if it was an orthodox fighter. I think that the rear kick of Jamal Hill is so long and it's so powerful that I think that's just going to be able to occupy the hands of Alex Pereira. I really do. I think he's going to be able to keep him at range with that. I think he's going to have a slight length advantage, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he'll use it well. I don't think he's going to rush in. I don't think he's going to overextend himself. I think he'll stay patient. He's very cerebral. He's a very, very smart fighter. And I couldn't sit here all day and tell you why Alex Pereira is so good. And he is incredible. And he continues to just defy the odds. So I have no doubt that he could go out there and do it once again because he's done it so many times before. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. But if we're to look at the intangibles, he is getting on in his career. He has got a lot of mileages on the clock.
That's a big factor.
He has had a recent, not so recent, but kind of recent knockout. He has been in just many 5-round training camps now, which is another thing. His consistency is through the roof. Now, you look at Jamal Hill, and he's coming off that injury, which is obviously going to have question marks over it. But more than that, he doesn't have all of those things. He doesn't have a lot of fights. He doesn't have a lot of wars. He doesn't have a lot of mileage. And we've seen Alex Pereira get caught before by less hard-hitting opponents. Israel Adesanya doesn't hit as hard as Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill has lights-out power.
I'm going to put an asterisk to that. I'm going to put an asterisk to that because it was at middleweight and the chin was gone. And he took Jan Blachowicz' best shots and Jiri Pajka's. So that I will counter that. The weight cut was a massive factor in that. Massive.
I don't know if it was.
I disagree, but
did he ever struggle to make weight?
Well, it's not about the struggle. If you've got a good team with you, you can weight cut pretty well, but it doesn't mean it won't affect you. It's still going to affect you. That's
basically what it means. If you have a safe weight cut where you're not dying, you're not majorly dehydrated to a level where you feel like you're going to faint, and you rehydrate correctly, that's exactly what it means. It does mean it's going to not affect you as much to take a shot. You may be right. Like, you very much could be right. It's also the fact that Israel is a pinpoint accurate striker.
That's true.
We've seen him do that to many, many people. We've seen him to do that to Paulo Costa. We've seen him do it to Robert Whittaker. Paulo Costa's got a chin, by the way. A chin. Like, one of the best chins. And he done that to him.
Yeah.
He's done it to Bobby Knuckles. He done it to Alex Pereira. So he's just the precision, I think, of it. I don't think it's necessarily his chin.
I think it's both factors. So than that,
I don't think it's a case of, he's Alex Pereira can eat shots and all of these things. I just think that the timing and the speed of Jamal Hill, he just has lights out power. He just has lights out power. He just finds that spot. And all I can see, I just can't, for whatever reason, I may be wrong, and we'll go on to the next fight, but I just see this playing out like the end of the first round with Israel in their first meeting in the UFC. And I look at it
same.
as him finishing it in that sequence.
100%. I'm exactly the same. I mean,
it might be
like
the same about
the rematch as well. It was the same, pretty
Yeah,
much the same sequence, except obviously Adesanya got the finish that time. Pretty much identical sequence. Pereira really pushing the pace against the cage. And the downside, I was going to mention this when you mentioned the left hook when we've just first started this sort of chain of conversation, is the trade off for that is his chin is wide open. He swings really far for that left hook. He's almost like a sort of charge up attack in a video game, and it leaves him so vulnerable for that 1-2 down the pipe, which of course is going to get there faster than a sort of wide shot coming from the side. The straights are going to land there quicker. And we've seen it happen. And I think Jamal could definitely do it again. And as I said, I went round 2 TKO. What is your final verdict?
I'll probably go round 4, round 3 or 4. I'm gonna say
4.
round 3, 3 TKO knockout
Okay.
Jamal Hill.
Yeah. I think I think we've always really been on the same page every time we sort of brought that matchup up. And I feel like we probably will be the same for the co-main event, Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan. And I actually think Yan Xiaonan is seriously underrated. I think her finish over Andrade won me some good money not that long ago. I think I can't remember what card that was on, but that proves she's quite in a way like a sniper in the way that Jamal Hill is. And your camera's gone again there, but well, we'll just keep going. It'll come back on. But for me, I think Zhang Weili is really just in her ascendancy right now. I don't think there's no secret there. She is so far ahead of everyone else in that division, and I don't see her losing her belt anytime soon. She's so well rounded, and I feel like in every factor, she's just better than Yan Xiaonan. So I'm gonna go with Zhang by decision. I think Xiaonan's pretty durable. I think she'll hang in there, and obviously the women's fights don't tend to end early as the men's. So I'm gonna go by decision.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna add
pretty
anything
standard.
to that. I'm not gonna add anything to that. I
Now
just
we want to
agree
talk
with you.
about two matchups that are probably the most impossible ones to call. First of which, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. I've been back and forth on this fight so long, and I still can't predict the winner. I'll throw one out now just because, make it concrete, make it on record. That I'll go with it. I'll go with chest. I'm gonna go Max Holloway, and that might be crazy to some people, and everyone's gonna wonder. The big factor is, when is Max Holloway's chin gonna get cracked? But for me, the difference is the age. I always say age is a bigger factor than mileage in this sport. You can take a lot of strikes, but if you're still young, you can generally hang in there. And I feel like if you're on the older side of things, I generally think the drop off is a lot worse. And Gaethje is pushing 36 now, right? He's 35, I believe. Max Holloway is 32, which might not sound like a big difference, but at those lighter weight classes, it's a huge factor. We've seen that with Volkanovski against Topuria, and I think Max Holloway can put a clinic on him. I really do. I can see Max getting a decision win. I think Gaethje's very durable. When have you ever see him get flat out KO'd? I don't think ever. It takes a hell of a lot to put him down, and it's usually when they're in a back and forth war. Eddie Alvarez, had to really just sort of force
Charles
the action
Oliveira
there.
done it.
Yeah, with a submission though. Obviously, he did knock him
sent
down,
him
but he was still
flying
fighting
across the cage.
Yeah, he was still fighting though. He wasn't
Yeah,
out.
but you said,
He
when
wasn't
do you
out,
see him
out.
put... I know, but you
Yeah.
said, when do you see him put him down? I was like,
Yeah, I meant out
That's
cold.
probably
Apologies.
fair.
I should have
Okay.
clarified. And another one, Poirier had to absolutely lay into him. He was in the chicken dance. Still wouldn't go out cold. And obviously, Holloway isn't renowned for his knockout power. Obviously, he did finish Korean Zombie recently, but I don't see him putting Gaethje away. But I do see him winning. It's definitely a fair chance at that. It's such a hard fight to call, though. Honestly, I'm not saying this with any conviction, but I'm going to go Max Holloway by decision.
I feel pretty confident in this pick.
Oh, now I'm invested.
I thought about it a lot, to be honest. And again, I feel confident. I'll preface the fact that it can go either way. I think when I give a prediction, I need to always put out there that that isn't how I believe it plays out 10 times out of 10. I just believe that's how it's going to play out this time, right? Which I think a lot of people blur the lines on. A lot of people don't quite grasp that a lot of the time. But I agree with you. And I've been saying this for the longest time. I don't quite understand why everyone feels as if Max Holloway is being sent to the slaughter. I don't understand where that comes from. Gaethje is one of the most exciting fighters of all time. He's got the most bonuses. He is the human highlight. When's the last time he flatlined someone with his fist?
It's actually true when you say it. Barbosa? No, Cerrone. Cerrone, I think, was the last time. I could be
When
wrong.
was James
Ferguson
Vick?
technically, but we didn't flatline him.
Didn't
Yeah.
flatline him. Didn't
Oh
drop
yeah, you
him.
said flatline. It would have been Barboza then, right? Whichever one, it was Barboza or Vic that for out cold. I can't remember which one was after what, but
My
one of
point
those two.
is not. My point is not that he isn't powerful. Obviously, I'm not trying to do some crazy hot take, but my point is, I haven't watched him knock someone out cold in a very long time. That's my point. With his fist, I got to keep prefacing that because I know the Dustin Poirier, fight, and that's a very real threat, right? That again shows his power and shows his technique and timing. But we're just talking punches here. I haven't seen that in a very long time, and I've never seen Max Holloway be dropped or knocked out. So yes, there's a possibility of it, and I get why people are somewhat concerned because Gaethje hits hard. But statistically, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, I don't think. I don't think so. I don't think that's a logical concern.
Gaethje's style actually plays into Holloway's hands perfectly because the one time we've seen Holloway, I don't know if it was the only time, but on the high profile level and in the biggest stages, move up to lightweight was against Dustin Poirier. And he struggled in that matchup to really deal with Dustin. And I think the big reasoning for that was because Dustin's got such a conventional style. He matches up quite equally with Holloway in a way. And obviously he has the size advantage, which is going to help him. So it's those two factors together.
You'd say he's conventional? I wouldn't say he's conventional.
Who?
Dustin Poirier.
Boxing? I think boxing-wise.
I would not say he's conventional.
Well, in comparison to Justin Gaethje is where I was going with it. So someone like Justin Gaethje, whose striking is wild in many metrics, that might, in a way, help Holloway. I know that sounds a bit weird. Obviously, Gaethje will have the size advantage. But,
will he?
Yeah. I don't
think he will.
Yeah. I don't think he'll be as big as everyone says it is, but he will have a natural size advantage. 100%.
I don't agree.
Gaethje's quite a big lightweight.
He's not.
I disagree. But I don't know.
think he is that big.
He's not like giant. He's bigger than most lightweights.
He's not that tall. He's not that broad, and he's not super heavy. He probably walks around fairly heavy, but like you look at his frame, he isn't some jacked 155.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk this. We're on the same page.
I think Holloway's going to look bigger than him. I really, really do. I think Holloway is going to 100%. Holloway's almost 6 foot, right? So he's going to be taller than him. And judging by how he looks most recently in his training footage, he's going to be more built than him. And every time that Holloway gets in the octagon, I always think he's much bigger than I remembered. I always think that. And Justin Gaethje is not that big. I don't know where you've got that from. He really is not that big. Powerful, yes. Great fighter, yes.
That we can agree on.
I don't think he's going to be... I think Max is going to have the size advantage in the matchup, to be perfectly honest. I really do.
Yeah, well, I think we're on the same page there. And one, I don't even know if we're going to be on the same page here because, again, another matchup that is so difficult to call. Charles de Bronx Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. I've been back and forth on this on my stream over the last month, really, like sort of touching on this. And I've decided to just settle with it. I thought this to myself a couple of days ago. I was like, I'm going to go with chest and stop doubting the man who every time I do doubt ends up bloody winning. And I made that mistake when he fought Dariush, and I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to pick Charles Oliveira by submission. I think I know that sounds maybe a bit mental considering the pedigree Arman Tsarukyan has on the ground. But I think he can do it. In a similar sort of vein to how he beat Gaethje. I think he has the advantage on the feet. Arman Tsarukyan is clearly leveled up massively, though, and there's no doubt in my mind he will be a champion one day. But I don't think he's going to take that step forward on April 13th. I think Charles Oliveira is going to knock him down a peg. I think round 1 or 2. Honestly, I see it going early. I think it's going to be an absolute firefight. And I can see him getting, whatever way it gets to the ground through a sort of knockdown or a takedown, I think he'll find that rear naked choke.
Yeah, I think he's going to guillotine him.
Oh, yeah. Almost forgot that existed for a minute. Yeah, I can see that too. Probably more so.
He's going to guillotine him. Not just from the conventional, he's going to wrestle and get caught. I don't think he'll look like that because typically someone like Arman Tsarukyan is going to be a bit too high level to just take a sloppy shot and get guillotined. But what Charles makes you do is fight a firefight. And I've seen Arman Tsarukyan struggle before. Now, that isn't a good enough reason for me to say, oh, this is why he's going to lose. And he's always come out on top more times than not. But the difference is Charles will struggle in this fight. And I believe Arman will struggle in this fight. But I've got a lot of evidence to suggest that Charles Oliveira is going to come out on top in that struggle. And there's going to be a time in that fight, whether it's on the feet, like you said, or whether it's in the transition going to the ground, or whether it's on the ground, that there's going to be the smallest window of opportunity. And I just think Charles is going to take it. He's just such a sharp finisher. Such a sharp finisher that Arman Tsarukyan's going to have to be flawless. Flawless for 3 rounds. And it's very hard to be flawless against Charles Oliveira because he creates car crashes and he creates chaos. We talk about Justin Gaethje doing that, but Charles Oliveira does that a lot as well. And the issue he had against Islam was defensively on his striking. It was that right hook that was landing over and over and over and over and over again. And then we saw him come out against Beneil Dariush, and he was slightly an evolved version. He was drawing out things, using feints and fakes and level changes. We'd never really seen that before. He was using a jab. We'd never really seen that before. Usually, he uses just a flying switch kick, closes a distance, and just tries to choke them. But he was drawing out attacks, and I was thinking, okay, Charles Oliveira's making some adjustments. And I just think that in 15 minutes, there's going to be 0.5 of an opportunity. I just think Charles is going to take it. That's just how good I think his finishing opportunity is.
Yeah, agreed.
Ability is. So yeah, I agree with you on that one.
What round?
I was going to say 3, and then I just thought, you know what?
It's got to be earlier than that.
He's probably just going to want to get it done in the first, isn't he?
I see it as well. Yeah, I said first or second,
Maybe,
more so first.
Maybe first.
I'm actually going to go with the same prediction as you. I switched it to a guillotine. I said rear naked choke, but guillotine completely slipped my mind. 100%. I could 100% see that. And I'll run for a couple more. Bo Nickel, Cody Brundage. I don't want to say it's a foregone conclusion, but we both said many a time how high we are on Bo Nickel and where he's going in this sport. So, you know, I don't think we can gloss over that one.
I just want to know how good that kid is. I just want to know.
And we'll know. We'll find out. We'll find out.
We won't.
And well, yeah,
we won't.
Yeah, but we will. They're doing the Sean O'Malley route with him. That's what they're doing. And that's no disrespect to Cody Brundage, but
I don't even think they are. You know, I don't even think it's a Sean O'Malley route because I guess it kind of is. But I guess the slight difference is the difference between Sean O'Malley and Bo Nickel is Bo Nickel's had no fights. Sean O'Malley has had a lot of MMA experience.
That's true.
He's done a lot of kickboxing. He done boxing. He trained a lot. He competed a lot when he was younger. And then he had I think 13, 14 amateur fights, which is a lot of amateur fights. And then when he got in the UFC, he was sort of like 11-0, 12-0. Bo Nickel's had about 7 fights in total. Amateur, pro, everything. So I don't know. I think it's just I get what you're saying, and I don't think you're wrong. I just think slightly different on that front. But I think he's as blue chip as a prospect can get. And people are so confused about, and we'll move on from it after this, but the thing that I just find interesting is people are so confused about him being on the main card. I don't understand why that's confusing people. I don't understand. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You go back and look at UFC 100. Who's on the prelims or who's on the main card? John Jones.
I believe he's on the prelims.
Card. Or on the prelims, sorry. There you go, even more so. So John Jones is on the prelims. And how the UFC see it and how I don't see it being an impossible outside the realm of possibility, he could be that guy. He could be that guy.
I think he is. I think he already is.
If this was a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have said, he's that guy. He's that guy. But I've just been around long enough now to know that
yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself.
You need to see it against... Yeah, you need to see it against...
Of course you do. I'm just getting excited.
Yeah.
I'm leaning into it a little bit.
I used to just be, no,
I remember one time you went on about a 20-minute rant about how he's going to be like one of the best ever. And it could happen. It very feasibly could happen.
No, I believe that. No, I do believe that. I do genuinely believe that. But I just can't say it with... I think that's how it should play out. Just by all the intangibles, his mindset, how he approaches the game. Like, his recovery, his family situation. Like, I mean the real weeds of this guy, not just like he's a good wrestler. No. I mean, he has a very stable family life. He has a very stable. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't party. He doesn't do
And they're
anything
big
but
factors.
study. Like, all of these small intangibles is which I know a lot of those don't apply, but a lot of those apply to John Jones in regards to his dedication to the game, in
I was going
regards
to
to
say
how
Tom
he
Aspinall,
studies
actually.
and breaks down and all of these different things. Only just because I was using John as an
No, of
example.
course,
But yeah, I think he's going to go out and knock out Cody Brundage in the first round,
So do
to
I.
be honest.
Yep.
I think he's just
Yeah.
going to knock him out.
By submission or KO, one of the two. Either way, I think first round
think he
finish is
knocks him out.
pretty. I think now, I mean, we could dive through the rest of the card, but I think we'd probably be here all day because I don't want to hear anyone ever saying UFC 300 is not stacked, because from top to bottom, there's
No,
not a
it's
fight there that I'm
stupid.
not interested in there. I
It's
honestly,
massive.
that sentiment I was seeing on YouTube is just ridiculous. And clearly people are just doing it for views because it's a load of bullshit. It's probably the most stacked card we've seen in years. John Anik shared the same sentiment
It's
the
the
other
best card
day.
I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. It's unreal. I mean,
In 4
Figueiredo,
years of
Cody
watching this
Garbrandt's the
sport.
opening card. Opening fight, apologies.
It is.
That's mental. You got two former champs as the opening fight. Like, what am I hearing about it not being the best card ever? And yeah, I would run through all of the other fights, but generally we'd be here all day, and we've already been going for quite a while. So I think we should probably wrap it up there, unless there's anything else you want to touch on.
Yeah, I want to touch on one or two.
Okay,
I want to touch on the fact that I'm buzzing to see Aljamain Sterling at featherweight.
Yeah, that is true. Almost forgot it was at featherweight. I'm excited for that too.
Buzzing to see him at featherweight. And there is actually no better test than Calvin Kattar. That tells you exactly where you are at the 145-pound division. That will tell you exactly, unequivocally, where your level is at featherweight. Because if you can go out there, man, I'm just so excited for that. I really
underrated
think,
matchup on there.
I really think that, as stupid as it is to say, because he's one of the best champions of all time, technically,
Too disrespected.
I really think he could be a dark horse of featherweight. He really,
I can see it. I think he'll get the rear naked choke.
He really
I think he will. I think he'll find the neck.
The grappling's just so much of a problem, and it's just a problem that no one else really brings to the table. You've got good grapplers in every division, right? But no one does what Aljamain Sterling does to that level.
Human
They just
backpack.
don't. They just don't. Yeah, I don't know. I'm buzzing with that. Brashka, Alexander Rakic has a fun fight.
I think
fight
Rakic
the
is going to
Eastern
beat him.
Europeans.
I think people are
Agreed.
massively sleeping on Rakic there.
Diego Lopez, like,
Oh my
on
god,
the
yeah,
prelims.
Lopez Yusuf.
Come
Like,
on.
see that any of these fights could be on the main event, except probably Rodriguez
Come
Andrade, which even then is still a fun fight.
No, that's a main event on a fight night, 100%. Jessica
Yeah.
Andrade has some of the most
That's a great fight.
bonuses ever, some of the most finishes ever in the UFC. Like, statistically, she's one of
And
the
I
most
think she'll find
exciting
the chin
fighters
here.
to watch.
I
So,
think she'll get another one.
Renato Moicano, like Davison Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt, opening things up. That's
There's not a bad
obscene.
fight on
Come
there.
on.
There's not a bad fight on there.
I can't remember if I was to like go into the weeds and be geeky and be like, I really want to watch this. I can find cards that I could take enjoyment from every fight. Don't get me wrong. I take real interest in every single fight, even the Holly Holm fight, which I typically wouldn't, just because I've seen her fight.
That's that little novelty that I mentioned,
but
right there.
It's the novelty, right? Because we've got Kayla Harrison making her debut, two-time Olympic gold medalist, making her debut from PFL, one of the biggest stars in women's MMA. Like, that's a cool narrative. Typically, I wouldn't be thrilled to watch Holly Holm compete and steal another main event spot on a fight night.
How does she do it?
But I'm pretty excited for that as well. And Dana White said, we're going to make a card that we've never made before. It's going to blow you away from the first fight to the last. He said, from the first fight to the last, every single one could main event a fight night card, right? That's 100% true. 100% at the minimum. I think the only thing which has caused such backlash is because the main event, he said, I was going to blow your socks off. But in fairness, they tried to make Islam.
Well, yeah, but that was, I'll counter that. That was the UFC's own fault. They put themselves in that hole. If they really wanted to, McGregor Chandler could have main evented 300. I don't think you can argue that.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. I don't think you're wrong there. But then again, they tried to make Stipe Miocic Tom Aspinall. Like they tried to
Yeah.
make Chimaev Leon Edwards. Are you joking? Chimaev Leon Edwards would have been.
Could you
That would have been
believe we nearly had that
crazy.
fight? We had that fight cancelled 3 times. Isn't that wild?
Oh,
Before,
so
when
good.
Leon was ranked number 3 and no one wanted to fight Chimaev. Crazy.
I've been seeing him
Crazy.
quite a lot recently in the gym. He's at Bangtao at the moment.
Oh, really? Chimaev,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that. Yeah, he's out there quite a lot.
I actually had quite a funny. I'd give you this mental picture before we go. I was just waiting for a cab before I went and I did them by myself at the beach, and I was just walking back, and I was just going to get a cab back to my apartment, and I just sat next to this row of shops, and it was quite quiet. In fact, it was very quiet. There was no one on the roads, and it was just this sort of side street, and there was really no one around, and there was this quite long stretch of road where you could see the top to the bottom, and just one man on his scooter is just riding from the top to the bottom, topless, no helmet on. Comes up towards Chimaev. It just goes past.
Really?
And the reason that's weird is because the last time I saw him in Abu Dhabi, he had an entourage of about 1,000 people, and he had 4 personalized G-Wagons escorting him around. So it was quite the juxtaposition. But
it's the fight game.
yeah,
That is the fight game.
I think.
Yeah. Apologies for this episode being out late. We had a myriad of issues with recording last time. This is actually the second time we've done this episode. Obviously, topics were completely different, but this will be out today on a Friday, along with I have to plug it. My hour-long big video is actually out in about an hour and a half at the time of recording. It'll be out by the time this episode's out. So go check that out. I'm going to plug it. Listen, we run this podcast. We can do what we want. That's Will. I've been Leo. We will see you again on Sunday. And cheers.